Hello, BookTube. Recently, this channel reached 12.6K subscribers, and I put out a call for questions, and as usual, going on years now, you did not disappoint. I got a ton of questions. So I mass copied and pasted them all over into a document. I'm going to read from that document on the Lenovo M8 here in order to answer them. With the usual caveats applying, since I copied and pasted it over them, I might have eliminated a question or two. If that happens to you, don't take it personally. I didn't notice. I haven't looked at these things. And the other being that I will cut these videos off at about 30 minutes so that this isn't going on forever, so that you can have a choice over when to listen and when not to. So I'll just do 30-minute installments until we're done. Little post-action report on this thing. It is fantastic. Just fantastic. This is Lenovo's bargain mini tablet. It's this brand new a couple of years ago. This thing did not cost you any money at all. It was $130, something like that, with sales happening all the time. And it's a lovely, clean, bright Android device. It's just wonderful. It had the certification sticker on the bottom there. I removed that. I took it out of the case. And then I did what you should do with your electronics. I went through the settings. I didn't just start using it right away. I went through the settings and make sure to domesticate the thing completely. Remove all the pins that give it any hint of your location. Not just the ones that ask for your location, but the ones that are quietly waiting for your location and will take it if you don't deny it to them. You have to go through all the settings and eliminate all of that. Eliminate all notifications of any kind. The machine should never be asking for your attention. Never. For me, I want it to have no sleep function. I will turn my device on and off. Thanks. I don't want it going off on its own. I want no audio functions at all, except for the explicit venues where I'm going to use it. So Voxer and playing YouTube videos. Other than that, I don't want any audio components at all on the thing. I don't want it making any beeps or boops or anything like that. It was a lot of fun to do that. That takes about half an hour to do. It takes about 20 minutes to get all of those settings right, and then another 10 minutes to put 200 or 300 books on this device so that, it feels like home. But anyway, we're going to start off with the 12.6K questions. We'll start off with Steve Gilmour. In the Outdoors book tag, one of the questions was about your favorite survival story. You alluded to your own personal survival stories before answering the question, which was about survival stories in books. Could you tell us one or more harrowing stories of survival from your travels? Oh, how much time do you have? I could tell you quite a few stories on land and at sea. Quite a few stories, far more than will fit in a Q&A, especially since most of them are long. There are only a few that are very, very discreet. I mentioned, I think in that tag, I mentioned a rock slide that just missed me by random chance. That is easy to recite in a short amount of time. Also, on the flanks of mountains, including in the Himalayas, lightning storms also are necessarily quick to narrate because the lightning is either going to hit you or it isn't. And if I don't know how many of you have ever had a lightning strike nearby to where you are, like 20 feet away, something like that. It doesn't feel like anything else. It doesn't act like it does in the movies. I don't really know how to describe it. Sort of like the sun coming to Earth for a picosecond. But I would be happy to tell more travel peril stories than you could shake a stick at over wine and calzones here at Hyde Cottage. Then BBZZ4321 says, I'm finally reading A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf on your recommendation. Thanks. Good. Glad you're enjoying it. What would you recommend of hers to read next after this? There's no order at all. No order. I mean, try her fiction, try her nonfiction. Thankfully, for all of us, she wrote a large amount of both. She says at one point, quote, novels so often provide an anodyne and not an antidote. Glide into torpid slumbers instead of rousing one with a burning brand. What are some novels that you think best exemplify the latter? Well, they're the ones I've talked about many times on this channel. The reading experience that causes the hairs on your arm to go up, that causes you to miss subway stops, that causes you to want to rush into the street and grab the next person and urge them to read this book. Those kind of, well, again, lightning bolt, just lightning bolt books. There haven't been many of those for me in 2022. I've read more books so far in 2022 than I'm guessing anyone else in the world. And they're almost all have been new releases, and hardly any have done that for me. So, but I live for that experience the same way as everybody else does. And that I could make a whole bunch of recommendations. You could, of course, go to my Steve Reads Literary blog, where you will find 30 years of recommendations like that for the year's best fiction. Let's see here. Nasser says, "Hey Steve, I have a couple more questions to ask." More questions. Oh, you must have another batch somewhere in here. Number one, in view of your recent video on Bro Watch, yes, I did a Bro Watch video. I would like to know if there are any books in the self-help genre that are worth reading. Out of those hundreds you've read, there must be at least a couple or so that stick out. Not really. No. Because of the grift involved. That is so off-putting. The grift is so off-putting. These authors are regurgitating pat bromides, obvious things, and cloaking it in a kind of cod armchair pseudo-profundity, but they're not doing it for their health. They want your money. They're doing it to bilk you, when these things require only a small amount of reflection on your own part to come to. Most of them are completely common sense, and the books that I've seen deliver them just don't do the job. I don't know who they're for. I don't know how the people who read these things and gobble them up could lack such basic self-awareness that they aren't able to go through these things themselves, unless it's just that they're waiting to find the right parental figure to give them advice they like instead of advice they don't like, even if they know the advice they don't like is good. I'm a specialist at giving that kind of advice. If you're young, you should be exercising every day. And exercise is different from exertion. Exercise is double heart rate for 20 consecutive minutes or more. You should be tired, panting, when you're done exercising. That should happen every day. You should be eating right. You should be putting money aside. You should be grateful for the people in your life who aren't going to be around forever. But you know all these things. Everybody who reads a self-help book, I swear, I'd be willing to bet a Boston cream pie they know these things already. In this genre, the grifters want your money, and the addicts of this genre want someone telling them what to do, largely because there's a gaping void where their parents should have been. It's unhealthy on both ends, and neither one of those aspects of it has anything to do with the precepts in the books. They are entirely beside the point. So no, there's none that stick out for me, unless I'm omitting one, but that would be rare. That would be very rare. Number two, what do you think of Harold Bloom's book, Where Shall Wisdom Be Found? And which one of his works do you like the most? Boy, Harold Bloom shows up in every Q&A, doesn't he? It's like he has this channel himself. I liked the book. As far as the things that I like of his, I buck the consensus when it comes to Harold Bloom. I like his elder books. The last 5 or 6 things that he did, major works, not reprints, not anthologies, not those little studies of Shakespeare, but the major works that are very much done at the end of an avid reader's life. That's very much the attitude that informs them. Critics thought they were self-serving and very thin. I don't agree at all. I really, really like them. So if you go to a list of Bloom's books, you'll see what I mean. You'll know right away which ones I'm talking about. P.S. I was watching one of your previous Q&A videos and found that a question was addressed to you from India. Yes, I have viewers from all over. Always a special treat when it's India, though, because I have very many fond memories of India. You asked the person to specify the place. I'm from Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh. Oh, and was curious to know if you have any memories of visiting the place. Of course I do. Of course I do. I was told over and over again, you like history, so you have to go to Gwalior to see the fort. Those of you who don't, I'm sure the rest of you can Google it. There's a gigantic old fort, a beautiful, ornate place that overlooks. It's perched over the city, and it is lovely. You could easily spend a day there just daydreaming about all the things, all the stories that fort saw. It isn't used as a fort anymore. It's Gwalior's. You'd know better than I would, but I'm guessing that it's by far Gwalior's biggest tourist attraction. By far the thing that everybody talks about. That was a foremost memory. That was friends of mine told me we have to go there because we want to walk you around, see what impression this makes of you. Although, as in almost all cases where there's a standout tourist attraction like that, the thing that I ended up liking was the time we spent there. The food, the conversation. I ended up, I like the place. I like the city. Wow, you live there. You live in Gwalior. That's incredible. Oh, I want all the stories now. What do you do there? I mean, how is the job market in Gwalior? Do you go to school there? And if so, what's the school area like? What's the school atmosphere? What about the bookstores? When I was there, I did not care about going to new bookstores. I wasn't going to get anything, so I didn't do it. But what about them? Are there? And are they good? Are there any people you know in Gwalior who are on BookTube? Well, I'd love to know all of that. But anyway, Andrew Russell says, I'll start by saying I finished Believe and Destroy by Christian Ingrao last week. What a read, so thanks for the recommendation. Well, I like hearing that these recommendations are landing. That's good. Now a couple of quick questions. Do you tend to go for historical biographies, and if so, why? Can you think of a recent example of a celebrity biography and of a well-known pop culture individual that has stood out? I tend to go for historical biographies mainly for the simple reason that the story is over. Whereas contemporary biographies, that isn't true, and so no matter how good they are, they feel incomplete. They can't help but feel incomplete. I have that problem with even some very big and very good biographies of Barack Obama. Of course, that's my problem with every single biography of Queen Elizabeth II. The subject doesn't have to be dead for long, but I think their story has to be over. Otherwise, what is a biography if it's not the whole story of a person? In terms of a contemporary pop culture figure, I cannot recommend Walter Isaacson's biography of Steve Jobs highly enough. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Caught me, and I think a lot of other critics, totally by surprise by how great it was. So, even if you're not interested in the subject, you're going to love it. Let's see here. Patrick O'Toole. Hey, Steve, thank you for your book recommendations. I believe most of my reading now comes from your videos. Well, my videos, or before there was a BookTube, my book blog, Steve Reads, which has a mountain of content on it. I'm hoping that a lot of it is findable still online. I'm not as conscientious with reformatting and importing it over to stevedonoghue.com as I should be, but the internet never forgets. So I'm hoping that a lot of it is out there. And before that, there was my information desk, where customers came once a day, once every 3 days, once a week for sure, every weekend, to get recommendations. So that's great. Feel free to contour your reading to me when it comes to life advice or dating advice or financial advice. Take what I say with a grain of salt. But book recommendations are what I do. You wouldn't be the first person who just basically gave their reading over to my recommendations and didn't regret it. Anyway, you have questions. Number one, I saw you haul a book on David Hume called The Great Guide. I bought it, read it, and did not understand it. Did you get into it? If so, what did you think of the book and of Hume in general? Well, I love Hume in general. And I would argue with you. We've never had wine and calzones here at Hyde Cottage, but I'd be willing to bet that you're only saying that you didn't understand it. I think that's probably your mind's way of saying that you kind of thought it was a little lazy, a little bad. I think what you're really asking is, why didn't I like it? Not, why didn't I understand it? I think you understood it just fine. And if I'm right about that, your instincts are completely right. It was a dead on arrival. It was a flat book. So don't assume the fault is yours. Believe me, if the author's doing a job, then you won't come out of it feeling that way. And there have been some great Hume biographies. So I would say the fault is in the book and not in you. And question number two, did you ever have dogs who got rowdy at meal times? Well, maybe once or twice. Maybe once or twice. But not once they knew I didn't want them to be. I mean, if there are multiple dogs, meals have to go smoothly. It can't be chaos every single time you put out food. I don't lay the law down with my dogs. I do it barely at all. I barely exercise any control at all. And if you need a somewhat traumatized testimony to that effect, just ask David Murphy what kind of a life Frida leads when she's here. I impose my will on my dogs barely at all. They're people. They're people under my care, but they're still three-dimensional people. So they're not mine to boss around unless it's very, very important. And meals... but anyway, what do you say here? I've 2 cockatoo brothers who are a handful when eating, and afterwards, any tips? Well, yeah, I'll have lots of tips. I can, probably even at a distance, I can fix it. But I need more than are a handful. That's a turn of phrase. That's an idiom. I have no idea what you're describing. What do they do? And it sounds like the problem isn't even just at mealtimes, that they continue being a problem even when the meal is over. So that's a situation that needs to be corrected. But what exactly are they doing? Feel free to email me. Is it food territoriality? Sometimes dogs can't stand to have someone eating near them or coming anywhere near their food. That has to be just broken. That has to be just broken. That's a leftover instinct from puppyhood that has just been somehow stuck around. Most dogs don't have it. Most instincts from puppyhood go away, as well they should. Most instincts from human childhood go away, or should. But it can't continue into adulthood. That just won't work at all. And also, it's deeply offensive to me. I am not just playing for the other team. I am the captain of the other team. Food possessiveness, when it's expressed towards other dogs, I clamp down on right away. You cannot do that. You just have to knock that off. I'm not going to put up with growls and barking and lunging at each other when I put your food out. And every once in a blue moon, a dog that expresses food possessiveness to me, growling at me, even baring teeth at me, that it provokes Jehovah down from the mountain. It only lasts a few seconds, but they never repeat it. That is Jehovah down from the mountain. But I don't expect you to do that. It's just, I've experienced this before. I think I can probably help. I just need to know what they're doing. I mean, a handful could mean anything. Frida's a handful at mealtimes. But I bet for the opposite reason, she isn't interested in food half the time. It goes days without eating. Strangest relationship with food I've ever seen in a dog. Mr. Morningstar says, 12.6K question. Has horror mayhem introduced you to any horror books that you enjoyed? Not that scared you, per se, but perhaps moved, enraged, disturbed, disgusted, horrified, shocked, thrilled, or intrigued you. Sounds like you're describing one of my marriages to Deb. In a way you previously assumed couldn't happen from reading horror. Short answer, no. Long answer, for those of you who might be wondering, Horror Mayhem is an event that's going on. It was created by the Bookish Bryants to celebrate horror in short form in the month of May. The month of May is almost over, and I have participated right up to the hilt. I have been reading tons of horror in the month of May, specifically because of what Mr. Morningstar is alluding to here, that horror has never really done anything for me as a genre. It hasn't intrigued or shocked or disgusted me. It has never frightened me. And I was kind of hoping that if I broadened my net, I got a huge anthology, The Dark Descent, by a great editor, David Hartwell, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. I was kind of hoping for exactly what you described, that some corner of that field would move just a little. It didn't. I have a couple of days left, but it didn't. Anastasia B. says, Dear Steve and Frida, congratulations on another milestone. I have 2 questions, if that is all right. I imagine that people are going to ask a lot more than 2 questions. I think that's pretty restrained. Firstly, is there a good big biography of Siad Barre in English? I don't think there is. And secondly, what do you think about Megan Chance's books? They seem to... I know she has fans. Maybe you're one of them. I don't mean to deride her. They are workmanlike. There's nothing wrong with her books. But that magic, that spark, they just seem completely lacking it to me. The closest... She wrote a book called Prima Donna that came the closest in a couple of scenes, but mostly I find her fiction just so flat. Maybe I'm not getting it, but I don't think so. I don't think she's a case where she's an author doing something that I'm not perceiving. I think it's just that she's not all that good. She's just good. But without ever thrilling. And that's what we're all here for, right? I mean, I'm the last person to talk because a huge amount of my reading is the filler books that I have to sift through in order to get to the great ones. The ones that just make your hair stand on end. The ones that just fill you with fire. I have to read a lot of good and also bad stuff in all genres in order to winnow out all the average stuff and get to the really good stuff. And she is resolutely an author that I would winnow. I mean, if you think different, great, good for you. But it's not that way for me. But as to your first question, you put your finger on something I always say on this channel. how many biographies there are out there to be written. People think the biography market is absolutely saturated, and that's not true. People also think the biography market is wide-ranging, and all you can do when somebody says that to you is laugh. Every year there are 3 Benjamin Franklin biographies, and yet not one of a man who had an utterly fascinating, violent, vigorous, more vivid than fiction life. I don't think there's been a single full-dress English-language popular biography of this guy ever. There are plenty of sources, plenty of them, both in his country and in his country of exile. You could make, I'm sure there are sources out there, and maybe such a book has been written and just not published in America. Keep in mind, my remit is only really America. I only deviate from that if, for instance, a UK-only title wins a major prize, and I'm really curious, I might find that. But otherwise, my remit is America, and I wouldn't expect a big American reading market for a biography of Barry. I don't know that anybody would even know who he is or care. They should. They should. There's so much to learn, good and bad, ugly and stirring, from his life story. If somebody ever does wander across your radar and say, all the biographies have already been written, you just tell them that's not true. Oh my God. In the 16th century, the 17th century, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th century, how many people have we come across on this channel in the last 5 years who simply don't have a modern full-dress biography in English? Anyway, let's see here. Chris Day, the theater critic. Congratulations on 12.6K, Steve. Do you read books while walking? Have you ever? What do you think of people who read books while walking? Did people do this more in the past than they do now? Well, nobody reads now. People have their phones now, so nobody reads. They watch TikTok instead. But no, I don't read while I'm walking because of the way that I read. I rip into books. I wrap myself in them completely. It's Mortal Kombat. It's not even combat. It's a lion ripping into a gazelle. But it's a total engrossing experience. I've lost count of how many people over the years I've said, let's meet at a train station or at a platform, a subway, or something like that. I sit there and start to read, and they walk up. They say hi. I don't hear them. They sit next to me, maybe pull out a book of their own. And when it finally comes time, they have to actually put their hand between me and the page in order for me to go, what? Oh, how long have you been there? If I read while I was walking, I would die in about 5 seconds. I'd be just creamed by a car in about 5 seconds. Dr. Bacon says, how are we doing for time? All right, we're fine. Hello, Steve. Thank you, as always, for doing this. Well, it's my pleasure. Question number 1. I was recently given a copy of Jonathan Haidt's book, The Righteous Mind. What do you think of the book and his work overall? I have often seen him grouped together with the likes of Steven Pinker and Jordan Peterson, which gives me great pause. Yeah, but you have to keep in mind, that instinct on the part of the radical blue checkmark, danger haircut left to group people like that into the broad umbrella of the intellectual dark web, that instinct on their part is mainly done from the same origin place as literally everything else they do, which is a spitting, venomous, puff adder on the back seat hatred. And you might say, a hatred of Jonathan Haidt? No, just hatred. You have never seen people more full and animated by hatred than the people who would make that grouping. And some of that grouping is accurate. And that's what makes the whole thing so annoying, is that they're not totally wrong. Not some of the people they lump under that intellectual dark web umbrella actually are part of an intellectual dark web of revanchist, dumb, knee-jerk, paleoconservative grifters. Some of the people in that umbrella are like that or have become like that over time. And they should give you pause. Those people should give you pause. But not everyone is like that. Not everyone they lump under that umbrella. All you have to do to get lumped under that umbrella is be a white man and have opinions, instead of bending the knee to whatever consensus they are pushing on Twitter today. And it literally changes from day to day. So you have to keep up with the state of your woke apologies to the whole universe for existing. And if you don't keep up with that, if there isn't a brown layer in your pride flag, then you're Hitler, worse than Hitler. And they'll target you online, they'll target you in real life, they'll target your job, they'll target the jobs of your family, your children. Uh, if, some of what you can do to get under that umbrella is simply be a cishet white man and have well-spoken opinions. If I weren't so resolutely small fry, I guarantee you they would lump me under that umbrella. I guarantee you I would. There's just another old fossil talking about how things were in the 1950s. Haidt's not like that. He's a genuine thinker. And I would argue there are a whole bunch of other people under that umbrella. Steven Pinker, I don't agree with almost a single thing that comes out of his mouth. But he does not share anything ideologically with the people they group him with. You just have to be cautious, as always, right? That's the theme of this whole channel. You just have to think for yourself. Listen and figure it out yourself. You'll know in a heartbeat if you're dealing with an IDW grifter. But no, Haidt's not. Although, you asked me about the book. I think the book is pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. He has a sort of a pop sociologist habit that I don't like. I see it a lot, which is that they'll never admit it, but they go in with a kind of an idea of what they want to say as a conclusion, and they sort of skim relatively recent research in order to back that up. Now that happens all across the ideological spectrum. I don't like it anywhere that I see it. I don't like it if it's Jonathan Haidt. I don't like it if it's Douglas Murray. Smart people should have the internal sense of shame not to do that. They should be digging deeper in their books. But anyway, you have other questions. Yes, we're never going to finish this Q&A. Well, question number 2. Is there a director currently working whose films you look forward to? Directors don't matter. The film bro's going crazy in the background. Question number 3, similar to question 2. What about actors currently working whose performances you look forward to? Now, that's a different story. Actors or either actors or the people they have to pick their material. I know there's some actors who just resolutely do not pick their material. They have a bosom friend, a comrade from many, many campaigns and adventures who is their manager, or even their personal manager who does that, and they just say, "What you pick it and I'll sign off on it. But I'm not going to do it myself. Nobody's interested in me picking my own projects." And then there are some who do pick their own projects. They do bring a satchel full of scripts out to the back patio or up to the bed and saturate themselves in it to see the potentials in those scripts. Whatever the mechanism is, I think it's easy to tell when an actor has someone or is someone who is doing that kind of picking, as opposed to either doing it themselves or having somebody do it who's not good at it, right? Like the classic, the big marquee example of an actor who obviously does not have someone like that, and also is not that person, is Robert De Niro. When we think of Robert De Niro as one of the greatest actors of the 20th century, look at how much garbage he's been in. And look at how much garbage he's been in that had to announce itself as garbage even in the script phase. Long before you got on set and realized that the director was a 20-something cokehead, you should have known that it was garbage long before then. Dustin Hoffman, another perfect example of that. You don't know. You can't tell ahead of time just because he's in something that it's going to be any good at all. And not just any good, that it's going to be even worth a single moment of your time. Just self-evident garbage. And there are actors today who, just from their track record, I say, I'm not seeing a whole lot of selling out here. And even the sellout bits, the things you obviously did just for an 8-figure paycheck, you're bringing something to it that no one else in the project is doing. So even there, like for instance, Ellie Fanning, I very much get that sense with her. I guess what I'm trying to say is I would watch anything that she was in the confident expectation that I would enjoy it. Another one would be Adam Driver. Even in the big marquee productions, he still stands out. He's still the only one there bringing an A game, even to a stickball game. Something like that. There's a short list of actors in my mind where if they are in a project, then I'm going to want to watch it. Not because I don't necessarily want to miss any of their individual performances, but because they will pick winners. They have a good track record of picking winners. I like that. I like that quality very much. I often wonder where it comes from. But I'd say those two. If you have not seen Ellie Fanning in the TV series The Great, about Catherine the Great, if you have not seen her in that, you are missing an unbelievable, sustained performance. that can be howlingly dramatic, but also this show, believe it or not, it's about Catherine the Great and Peter the Great, or Catherine the Great and, you know, a bunch of vile, scruffy Russian noblemen. You wouldn't think so, but it's also giving her a chance to do amazing comic turns. There's one in almost every episode. If it's just passed you by as yet just another costume drama, oh, go and watch it. You're going to love it. Well, let's wrap this up at 30, and then we will come back for part 2.